Good morning. Today is Thursday, June 27th, 2024. I'm Andrew Pritchard in for Eric Snodgrass one more time today. Matt Reardon will be with you tomorrow, and Eric will join you again next week. I'm going to start off looking at the visible satellite picture. I love looking at this to just start off my day. You can usually pick out the big story of what's going on. And again, it continues to be a very active pattern with areas of low pressure traveling along the U.S.-Canada border, leaving frontal boundaries in their wake that are the focal point for additional rounds of showers and storms. So I can pick out one area of low pressure, just kind of swirling away here, exiting up to the top right with a frontal boundary extending across the Atlantic coast. Back into the southern U.S., the little area of low pressure spinning along that. We'll have showers and storms in the forecast across the southeast today. Behind that front, we are cooler, we are drier across the Great Lakes, the central and eastern Corn Belt. Beautiful blue skies, comfortable temperatures out there, and relatively low humidity. Although, as you make your way back toward the west, I shouldn't say although, but just saying, you make your way back to the west, the pattern repeats. We get that flow of Gulf moisture coming up through Texas, up along the front range here through the high plains, and our next area of upper level low pressure is beginning to emerge here across the western U.S. You see the upper level flow coming in from southwest to northeast. A lot of support there. We're going to generate another area of low pressure that will run along the U.S.-Canada border, bringing another round of showers and storms to the region. So the radar picture here early on Thursday morning. Again, storm system number one departing here, showers moving out of Maine, some lingering showers, maybe a couple storms in the Carolinas back toward northern portions of Alabama. And again, that area of low pressure kind of spinning across this area. Look for some corridors of, locally torrential rainfall with some pockets of heavier thunderstorm activity there, maybe a stray severe storm as well. Some showers beginning to emerge here as the next upper level disturbance moves into the high plains. Those showers across, portions of South Dakota down into Nebraska and Kansas. This activity will continue off to the east, and then we will destabilize along the front range here and allow for some additional scattered severe thunderstorms to develop during the afternoon hours here Thursday afternoon into the evening. Now, as we look at the last 72 hours of precipitation, from corridors of heavier rainfall there, again, several MCS or several thunderstorm clusters at times bringing severe weather in the form of gusty winds, some large hail, and again, some locally heavy rainfall. Anywhere from, portions of the Dakotas into central and eastern Nebraska. One lone supercell producing a tornado and some big hail in west central Nebraska. Couple of isolated severe storms in portions of northern and central Oklahoma, some big hail and big wind in the Oklahoma City metro. And then you make your way a little bit further to the east into the Ozarks, parts of eastern Kansas, eastern Oklahoma, some heavier rain there with a couple of bigger, more widespread thunderstorm clusters making their way through. I heard some folks in southern Missouri and parts of eastern Kansas who have been very dry over the last several weeks or more finally got in on some of that rainfall here over the last 24 to 48 hours. Now, with the emergence of the next disturbance, we do have some severe weather to talk about. We'll see kind of the same pattern repeating itself with that severe weather risk today across the high plains. We've got a slight risk that extends all the way into the interior west. Portions of the mountains here are going to be seeing some of that summertime thunderstorm activity. The greatest risk here going to be across portions of the high plains, eastern Montana, the western portions of the Dakotas into the sandhills of Nebraska. Again, look for scattered severe storms there, producing some very large hail, maybe some gusty winds, and cannot rule out an isolated tornado or two. Now, as we look at the risk tomorrow, we continue to move eastward with that area of low pressure, the frontal boundary extending south from that. So we've got a slight risk from southern Minnesota through Iowa, Missouri, into Kansas, Nebraska, and then all the way back here, that front kind of curving back to the west. We'll have that risk for a severe storm all the way back into northeastern portions of Colorado. And then on Saturday, the area of low pressure makes its way into the Great Lakes. Should be right here, kind of on the Ontario-Quebec border. The cold front extending back to the west. We get that highest risk for severe weather, just a slight risk across Ohio, into portions of western Pennsylvania. We do have a marginal risk here in northern Oklahoma on the trailing part of that frontal boundary, all the way back into the southern high plains. Now, as we talk about excessive rain, we do have a slight risk for excessive rainfall in a couple of pockets here. Again, that monsoon activity starting to ramp up. Portions of the Four Corners could see slow-moving, training thunderstorms here, so not a widespread flood risk, but some isolated areas could see repeated rounds of showers and storms moving slowly, and that could allow for some heavy rainfall, again, in rather localized areas. We've also got that risk for slightly more widespread soaking rains across the Dakotas into southern portions of Saskatchewan and Manitoba, and then the risk for multiple rounds of showers and storms across the Central Plains, portions of Nebraska, Kansas, into the Kansas City area. Omaha as well could see some heavy rainfall over the next couple of days. And as we go into the day tomorrow, that risk shifts on east into portions of Iowa, western Illinois, northern Missouri. These areas could see some slow moving, repeated rounds of showers and storms. And then on Saturday, we've got that marginal risk kind of just covering that frontal boundary as it extends from the northeast through the Ohio Valley into the central plains down into the southern high plains. Now, again, we talked about the severe weather risk, the flood risk. Here we got flood watches in effect across portions of the interior west, New Mexico into western Colorado, portions of Utah. With that flood watch today, again, talking about the potential for slow-moving, training thunderstorms across this region. We do have the heat kind of centered on the southern plains. We've got that heat advisory across the Red River, portions of southern Oklahoma, down into North Texas, all the way down to the Gulf Coast. And then we've got a heat advisory in effect here across portions of the Carolinas as well. That heat kind of, confined to the southern plains into the southeast with that ridge. It's a little bit flatter there. We'll talk about that here. We'll look at the 500 millibar height pattern, just kind of run it out over the next 10 days or so. You'll see the pattern just repeating itself. We've got these upper level lows, one across eastern portions of Canada, maritime Canada into the northeastern U.S. Next disturbance right here coming in from the Pacific Northwest, and then you see trailing disturbances here, keeping that very fast flow across the Pacific Ocean, all the way from Japan to the Corn Belt. The jet stream just continues to be very energized. It's very fast flowing winds, and those are, bringing with it storm systems and upper level disturbances that keep us very active and unsettled in some of the same corners here across the lower 48. So let me just kind of run this out over the next few days. This is the disturbance that emerges today into the day tomorrow, giving that severe risk from the high plains today into the central plains, the Missouri River Valley during the day on Friday, and then off into the eastern U.S. on Saturday. We'll get a little bit of ridging behind that as we start off next week, but here we go into kind of the Monday, Tuesday time frame. Our next trough beginning to emerge. This would give a renewed risk for severe weather across the upper, Midwest, across the Dakotas, into eventually the Great Lakes and the central Corn Belt here Monday and Tuesday of next week. You see another trough beginning to emerge here as we get into the Thursday and Friday time frame. Just keeping the pattern going. Any heat really being confined pretty far south here from the southeast U.S. all the way to the southern plains at times. Seeing some of that ridging, shift off to the southwest U.S., but really not allowing the ridging to expand really far north across the Corn Belt, which I know in some areas we need some of that heat to eventually work its way up into the Dakotas, get some, heat, get some sunshine on the crops up there. It's just not really in the cards over the next 10 days or so. We look at this pattern here, the jet stream winds, we're going to 500 millibars here, just kind of showing the same thing. The winds coming around the base of each of these troughs, they are speeding up, fanning out. We get upward vertical motion there. We're generating cloud cover, storm systems, precipitations. It's a very active pattern. Again, not really reflective of what we've seen the last several years, which is much weaker jet stream flow this time of year. Getting into the early part of summer, late June, early July, the last several years have reflected much weaker flow, at times split jet stream flow, and jet stream flow that is well to the north, north of the Canadian prairies a lot of times over the last several years. So to have very energized jet stream flow, very strong flow, and flow that is, loaded with storm systems running along this kind of southern path, this is even south of the U.S.-Canada border. This is just a very, very active summertime pattern that is not going to relent over the next 10 to 14 days with a series of storm systems that just continue to do basically the same thing. So let's look then at, the response here. This is your precipitable water. So this is another way of looking at moisture content within the atmosphere. I love this loop because it just kind of points out the story to me. The story that I want you to see is the return flow of moisture from the Gulf of Mexico up the high plains as areas of low pressure travel along the U.S.-Canada border. These tap into that deep moisture. They kick off widespread showers and storms, at times producing some locally torrential rainfall, at times producing severe weather. And when we see more than one of these complexes of storms impacting the same area over a several day span, that's how we get situations like we have ongoing in parts of Minnesota, Nebraska, Iowa, and South Dakota, with just, catastrophic flooding in some cases here, just completely overwhelming infrastructure, devastation in some of the cropping areas here, especially in eastern Nebraska. But I know that we're just starting to scratch the surface on some of the impacts with this flooding rain. And unfortunately, I have to keep telling you that the pattern continues to reload. Moisture being brought north, interacting with the storm system for the next couple of days. This is your Thursday, Friday outlook. This frontal boundary, again, by the time we get to Saturday, extending from the northeast all the way back to the high plains. You'll watch the same exact thing happen, though. The next area of low pressure emerges as we get into Monday and Tuesday. July 1st and 2nd. Look at that big feed of moisture now all the way from the Gulf up to the high plains. We've got our next front sweeping through. That's going to kick off another round of showers and storms, at times producing severe weather, at times producing locally heavy rainfall. We get to Wednesday, basically the same thing. The front now extends from the northeast, swings back through the central Corn Belt, all the way back to the high plains. Look for at least isolated to scattered storms along that frontal boundary. And then let's just take it out a little bit further. We go all the way to July 4th, another system now, bringing another front through. Let's take it all the way out here. This is July 5th, 6th, and 7th. You see basically the same thing here. Frontal boundary from the northeast through the Corn Belt, back to the high plains. We'll then reload for, the potential next storm system to come through. So this is through July 6th, just verbatim from the European model. We can now look at, the precipitation forecast that accompanies all this. We'll spend a little time here with the high-resolution NAM model. I showed you here Thursday morning, scattered showers and storms ongoing from South Dakota down into Nebraska, far northern Kansas. This exits the area. Let me go ahead and bring this back and run it a little slower, because the main event gets going here as we get into, this is 2 p.m., 3 p.m., 4 p.m., let it catch up here, getting into 5, 6 p.m. Look at this activity here. These are scattered, very intense storms that'll likely be producing some very large hail, golf ball to baseball sized hail across the Dakotas, western Dakotas primarily early this evening into western Nebraska, eastern Colorado, and western Kansas could get on this risk for severe storms as well. Can't rule out an isolated tornado or some damaging wind gusts, but I think big hail is going to be the big story for the next 12 hours or so across the high plains. Now, we'll get into about midnight, sunrise on Friday morning now. These showers and storms, they continue off to the east, losing their severity, but bringing some rain and thunder to parts of Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, western Illinois, and to parts of the Kansas City area as we wake up on Friday morning. This activity, too, continues off to the east, moving into parts of the eastern Corn Belt as it weakens on Friday afternoon. Maybe some rain moving into central Illinois, central Indiana during the afternoon hours on Friday, and then this area reloads with instability as that frontal boundary continues to swing through. Look for scattered severe storms kind of in the Missouri River Valley here. Kansas City, Topeka, Omaha, up to Des Moines, parts of northwestern Missouri. Look out for some severe storms during the afternoon and evening hours on Friday. We'll look for this to congeal into another MCS, another cluster of thunderstorms that could, either sink off to the south into the Ozarks. We could see this move a little bit further to the east toward the St. Louis area, parts of southern Illinois, anywhere from eastern Kansas into central and southern Missouri into central and southern Illinois. On the lookout for another cluster of thunderstorms Friday night into Saturday morning. You see these showers and storms probably bringing a lot of just, pockets of heavy rain, maybe some intense lightning through parts of Illinois and Indiana during the very early morning hours on Saturday. This system continues quickly off to the east. Then by the time we get to Saturday, that risk for any severe storms, any pockets of heavy rainfall starts to move into, again, Ohio, Pennsylvania, along that front stretching back into the southern high plains. Let's kind of quickly look at the European model, take it a little bit further out. We'll start here. This would be Thursday evening. We've covered this, that risk for severe storms along the front from the Dakotas into western Kansas today. As we get into the day on Friday, that risk for severe storms is greatest here across parts of the Missouri River Valley. We'll take this into Saturday now. That front continues off to the east as we get into Saturday night. Front kind of located from the northeast all the way back into the southern high plains. Look for scattered showers and storms anywhere along this front, but most numerous in the northeast U.S. on Saturday evening. This front clears out Sunday. We get a little bit of a break across the Corn Belt. Saturday and Sunday, pretty dry across the Corn Belt. A lot of sunshine, some pretty pleasant temperatures. Probably a good day to get out there and do some field activities before Monday. We start to bring in the next storm system. So Monday and Tuesdays turn stormy across the Corn Belt once again. Monday going to be stormiest across the northern plains, the upper Midwest, the Dakotas, Minnesota, Iowa, Nebraska, and the Dakotas. Look out for severe weather on Monday evening. And then on Tuesday, the risk for severe weather shifts east into the Great Lakes, along into the mid-Mississippi Valley, again, along that frontal boundary. So I know I'm the severe weather guy. I love talking about severe weather, but this is really the pattern. It is a pattern that repeats with severe thunderstorms and those severe storms bringing beneficial rains in some areas, but in others, and in a lot of cases here, to areas that really don't need the rain. So severe weather and flooding rainfall, that just really continues to be the theme over the next 10 to 14 days. So this front clears out Tuesday, Wednesday, but then we've got more coming. This is your Thursday, Friday, Saturday, looking at renewed shower and storm activity across the northern and central U.S. You get a picture like this over the next 7 days. This is your rainfall forecast. Over an inch of rainfall across much of the Canadian Prairie, much of North Dakota into Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, eastern Nebraska. A lot of the Missouri River Valley looking at the chance for 1 or more inches of rainfall. In some areas, there's simply going to be locally heavy rainfall here that's not picked up by this forecast chart. We can jump over here and look at the European AI forecast system here. Same pattern, just very evident. These areas of low pressure running along the U.S.-Canada border. So you get heavy rain along north of that track across the Canadian Prairie. This is good. We've wanted a very active, growing season across this area after several very dry years in a row. But here across these problem areas where we continue to see flooding concerns, the rains do not stop over the next 2 weeks. Plenty of opportunity for multiple rounds of severe weather and locally heavy rainfall over the next 10 to 14 days. Those temperatures, again, they're going to stay warmer south, cooler north, with this very active jet stream kind of running right in between. So temperatures here early on Thursday morning in the 40s and 50s across the upper Midwest into the Dakotas. Just a very cool start to the day with high pressure on the backside here, even into the central Corn Belt. Waking up with a temperature in the 60s in central Illinois today felt quite good, along with the lower humidity across the area. Over the next 10 days overall, again, cooler temperature anomalies across the northern plains, especially parts of Montana into the Dakotas. Those temperatures running anywhere from 5 to 10 degrees cooler than average over the next 10 days overall. So we need some heat, some warmth in these areas. It's not in the forecast over the next 10 days. There may be a day or two that's a little warmer there, but by and large, cooler north, warmer south is the pattern here for our temperatures. We can look at those highs over the next few days just to kind of put some context to it. Again, Thursday, those highs in the 70s and 80s, just about everywhere across the Corn Belt, except for, if you want to consider yourself in the far, portions of the Dakotas here. Getting into the high plains, certainly the ag belt there seeing some warmth. Let's run this out through Friday. Another shot of cooler air on the backside of this storm system, keeping it cool in the north, warmer in the south. This is Sunday. This is now Monday. Getting into Tuesday of next week, very little change. Cooler north, warmer to the south. A quick check of your tropics, a couple of little disturbances we're watching right now down across the Atlantic. We've got a disturbance here. This would be AL94 with a 30% chance of cyclone formation over the next 7 days. This disturbance is going to make its way through the Yucatan and then eventually into Mexico here, making its way in across the western Gulf of Mexico, bringing some heavy rain to central portions of Mexico as we get into the weekend. And then over here, we've got AL95. This one with a better chance of cyclone formation over the next 7 days, but it is way out there. It'll be making its way into the islands here probably in the next 5 or 6 days. So something to watch here, something we'll be talking about, though, for a week or more if it's going to be bringing some impacts anywhere near a North American coast. So just checking in quickly. This is 94. This is the one that is currently, this will be Honduras and making its way through north of Nicaragua, the Yucatan over here off screen to the left. So this slowly continues with a lot of thunderstorm activity. Not a real tight area of low pressure here, of course, and it will be impacting some land over the next 72 hours. That, of course, is why that forecast there. About 30% chance of development, not going to be making landfall in the U.S., but certainly could bring some torrential rainfall to portions of eastern and central Mexico. So that's what I've got for you today. I hope you have a wonderful Thursday, a great weekend as we head into that. Again, Matt will be with you tomorrow morning. Hope you've enjoyed our little fill-in here for Eric. Eric will be back with you tomorrow, next week. Have a great Thursday.